To the next thing we decided to make a ranking of our favorite video game consoles. So we have decided to we made ourselves like a top 10 rank. And then we added some friends to help with this top 10 rank. So it
Only
wasn't,
because we tied it.
because we couldn't get a definitive list. So this is our top five um, video game count. Okay, so we went ahead and I will let you, kind of talk about what I know is one of your favorites. Um, that's why it's so high on the list because of the score you kind of helped give it. Talk about our number five video game console of all time.
Number 5 is Sega Dreamcast. And yeah, it was short-lived, unfortunately. But Sega Dreamcast had so many unique ideas. I still love. Now, we've kind of made it where it's more where you so like remember playing football games. If you're playing at home locally, now online it's not as big of an issue. You can see which plays you're playing. Sega Dreamcast fixed this issue by having a little memory card with a screen on it where you could pick your plays from that memory card. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was the VMU, I believe it was called.
Yes.
Um, and
I believe it was
it
also
helped.
used for Sonic games, Sonic Adventure,
It
where you
had
could
different
go to Chow.
different features for different games, but it kind of reminded me of a Tamagotchi screen, where it was
Yes.
just this small, very small. I don't even know what that technology would be, but they used it a lot in the '90s for like Tamagotchi and stuff like that. But Sega used it on the controllers, and it acted not only as a screen, but it was your memory card, I believe.
It was. It was.
So, but it also helped the Dreamcast controller. It was really bulky. Think Xbox, except a legitimate reason for it to be bulky.
Yeah.
Where
Right.
the original Xbox was just bulky to be, I don't know, to
America.
put their
I feel
giant,
like
to put their
Xbox. It was
giant
America.
X logo in the center of the controller. Where the Sega actually had a purpose on why it was bulky, but it was definitely it felt weird. Um, I don't think that did the Sega Dreamcast any favors, the controller feel.
No,
But
maybe not.
the people who had a Dreamcast adored it, and that's why it's number five on this list. Is because we had a Dreamcast, and we really enjoyed games like NFL 2K, which was 2K5, which I don't think ever made it on the Dreamcast. It was PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately, Dreamcast didn't last
but
very
but
long.
but the series lived on after the Dreamcast with 2K Sports. As a matter of fact, there's still 2K games still around to these days, and they make the basketball games and everything. Um, but NFL 2K5 is still my favorite football game of all
Oh, it's
time.
great. It's great.
But
It's
that
great.
series all started with the Sega Dreamcast because the 2K games blew the Madden games out of the water, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It even got to the point where NFL and Madden EA did a exclusive rights after 2K5 outsold.
Well, that's because they sold it
Madden.
for $20 and it was a better game.
They did sell. No, they were cutthroat. They undersold them, and I think the idea was Madden was such a big deal in video gaming that I think they had to sell it for $20 to get people to play it. They also, I think, released it I think it was like 2 weeks before the new Madden that year.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like their strategy to get fans. So they knew I think they knew if you play our game, you'll probably never play another Madden again. And I think they would have went back to the regular price the next year, but no, EA threw money at the NFL to get that exclusive license, and we've had Madden games ever since. which is sad because competition makes gaming better. But
Agreed.
unfortunately, I don't like that practice. But let's get back to talking about the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast had, Crazy Taxi, Shenmue was,
Mm.
and the one I remember, I really enjoyed. Power Stone was a
Yeah,
game
that
that
was a fun one.
I really adored and loved playing. But one of the games that I don't think I'm usually in this realm of type of gaming, but I was addicted to for some reason. And I think it was just the newness of online gaming that the Dreamcast kind of that was ahead of its time with online gaming. It was one of the first systems that offered that, and Fantasy Star Online
Fantasy Star Online, PSO.
seen a lot of that.
PSO is one of the biggest reasons that I had Dreamcast so high on my list.
Yeah. So if it wasn't for a game like Fantasy Star Online, NFL 2K, Power Stone,
Sonic
I mean,
Adventure 1 and 2.
yeah, Sonic Adventure, putting Sonic in a 3D realm. I also remember a little gem, which to me always reminded me of like their version, like a modern version of Punch Out, was Ready to Rumble.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Ready to Rumble was a nice arcadey, cartoony style boxing game that I just had a lot of fun with, and I think they made a sequel to that. But yeah, I remember having a lot of fun on my Dreamcast. Um, it's not going to go down in history on most people's top list because it was a failed system. It's actually the system that Sega stopped making hardware because they couldn't outsell the PS2 or the GameCube. Um, but it was definitely, I think, ahead of its time. I think it tried to do online gaming before the internet was really prepared for it, to be
Yeah.
completely honest. Um, but it was the first home console that gave us that. And unfortunately, being the first isn't always the best for success
Yes.
because the next guy can do it better and improve on it.
Yeah, and it came out a year before the PS2, and
Yeah.
was it the um
Yeah, it was about a year ahead of the PS2. Um, but even the PS2 online gaming wasn't, I mean, huge. I mean,
I played a little bit.
I
I'm
think it was 360 era and
360 is where
PS2,
it really.
PS3 era. I think's when online gaming really kind of got to where it needed to be. It
Mhm.
was there. I mean, you had Halo on Xbox, and
The other
it
problem is
was
we
there,
didn't
but
have
it was
fast enough
just yeah.
internet back then.
We were still dialing it up, dialing
Yeah.
it up.
Oh,
Okay,
I remember
so
dialing up with a Fantasy Star.
yeah, so Fantasy Star Online, I remember having a lot of fun with that one. Okay, so let's move on to our number four console, which is the PlayStation 2. Um, Now I can tell you that it is the best-selling console of all time. They just announced that it has sold 160 million units, I believe, through its lifetime, which is amazing because I think that number was lower, like literally a couple weeks ago. Um, it's somehow PlayStation keeps finding more numbers to say that they sold for that system. It's weird because the Switch is like inching closer and closer, and they're finding more numbers somehow. But anyhow, regardless, I'm a Nintendo fanboy, obviously, but I can tell you that the PS2 was one of those times that, as a gamer, I my jaw dropped. Um, I remember walking into my GameStop and at the mall, and I remember them demoing the newest Madden, which would have been, I believe, Madden 2001 with Eddie George on the cover. Um, Madden 2001 was the first time that I literally, and I know I'm wrong now, but I literally remember watching that game at GameStop, seeing people play it on the demo kiosk, and
Yeah.
thinking to myself, that looks like real people. Like we're playing real people. And because as much as I liked 3D gaming in PlayStation era and the 64 era, that gave us the 3D gaming, the PS2 graphics looked amazing. And it was probably because of the jump of the polygon look that we had to the smooth 3D, look that the PS2 gave us. And then they've just improved on it since, obviously. Um, but I remember seeing Madden thinking, holy crap, gaming will never get better looking than that. And That is like the pinnacle of graphics, and it was the football game that did that. They also had that's where God of War started.
That's
Was
where
the
I got
PS?
Final Fantasy 10.
Yeah, Final Fantasy X, Kingdom Hearts series started. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I remember playing a little game called Burnout 3 that
Oh,
was just one of my
Crash Mode,
favorite games.
one of my favorites.
We would get together and play on that game for hours, just doing crash mode on Burnout 3. I still just do not understand how they can't give us that game back.
Yeah,
Uh, give us a remaster of Burnout 3, or I don't know, tell us in the comments. Maybe you can buy it on PlayStation Network or Xbox online or something. I don't know if that game's still around to play on modern consoles, but I had so much fun with Burnout 3. It was such a great game. And then, of course, it didn't birth the Grand Theft Auto series, but it definitely perfected the Grand Theft Auto series because Grand Theft Auto started on the PlayStation. Um, but we got Grand Theft Auto 3, we got Vice City, and San Andreas.
I remember when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, me and my friends would get together, and not a multiplayer game, mind you. There's no
No,
multiplayer to Grand Theft Auto 3, but we would take turns. I didn't know that there was a story to that game for a long time because me and my friends would just take turns. All right, steal a car, try to get the police pissed off, and try to survive as long as you can. Oh, the police killed or got arrested you. It's the next person's turn. That's what we did with Grand Theft Auto 3. We didn't do story. We didn't talk to people. We got arrested.
yeah, Grand Theft Auto 3 was amazing. Vice City, I just think perfected it. And
Everything.
then a lot of people feel like San Andreas is the best of the three.
San
But
Andreas is good, but Vice
I
City.
think I played Vice City more than any of them. That's just me. I kind of like the '80s look of that game.
The
and
music
everything.
was great for that
The
one.
music. It was just
The
such
music's
a great,
been great on all of them.
great
but
experience. But the Grand Theft Auto series that birthed that, and then the biggest thing, which wasn't even about gaming, and I think part of the reason it sold so well, is it packed in with a DVD player, which at the time, DVD players were expensive. And this system came out with a DVD player that you could play your DVDs. So instead of going out and buying an expensive DVD player, hey, mom, dad, which I mean we were adults, but
Actually,
dad, hey, buy the PlayStation 2 and you get a DVD player with it. It's
for
like
me, it was
what a great selling
I,
point.
I was talking to my ex-wife or she was my wife at the time, and I'm like, "You get this? That is my biggest reason that I got a PlayStation 2 over any other system when it came out, because I was like, I could sell that, be like, this gets us a DVD player. We don't have a DVD player." So I remember going to one of those rental place, Rent-A-Center places like that, and I managed to get a PlayStation 2 through Rent-A-Center, and it came with one of my favorite Disney movies of all time, uh, The Emperor's New Groove. So I got The Emperor's New Groove DVD. It came with my PlayStation and PlayStation 2 for a DVD player and, well, gaming for me. So that's how I sold that. I didn't sell it to my mom and dad. I sold it to my ex-wife.
Yeah, I was married too when it came out, so it was.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because when I bought DVD for the first time with my wife, and I think we were dating, we wasn't married yet, but when we bought a DVD,
I wasn't married
with the
either,
TV,
actually.
it was also a Disney movie. It was Finding Nemo, and, and I remember buying our
2003.
buying our 50-inch big screen TV, thinking that was the baddest ass TV I'd ever had, and you know, it was a cool TV, and I remember Finding Nemo was the first thing we popped up on there, and I think it was through the PS2 that we were able to play that DVD. So it was just kind of neat that you know, something about Disney and the first DVDs we buy. It's kind of funny, but.
Yeah.
But anyhow, but yeah, the PlayStation 2 is definitely deserves to be up on that list because it just conquered the world. It was so big. If you didn't live in that era, or if you don't remember, it was massive. Everybody had a PlayStation 2. It was the biggest one. And it was before anybody was split between PlayStation and Xbox, and before Nintendo started getting kind of weird and making completely different hardware than everybody else, where they wasn't even really part of the competition. They were more, you either had a PS2 or an Xbox, and then you might have a Nintendo with it. Like they became like everybody had a side system with the Nintendo. It was never really
Yeah.
competing directly with the PS2 or the Xbox. But yeah, nobody really knew the power of Xbox yet, and the PS2 just was massive. But yeah, it was huge. But let's go ahead. I'm going to let you take this one. Number 3.
So number 3, we have the Xbox 360. Now, Rage has a slight issue with this. He did not want this on the list. And I kind of know why. At the time, the 360's heyday, Rage didn't have internet. So one thing about the 360 for me, and why this was my number one system.
I had
360.
dial-up. I had internet. I just had dial-up.
Oh, is that what it was? I didn't think you had...
I lived out in the. I just want everybody to understand. I lived out in the country, and we could not get high speed at that time.
That's what it was. Okay.
So we had dial-up internet, and you at this point, because in the Dreamcast era you could use dial-up. By the time 360 rolled around, dial-up was too slow to play these games.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah. Well,
so
he didn't have access to game or to the internet to play gaming. But this is where I first got into the foray of on internet gaming, getting to play online with my friends. This is my introduction to it, and loved it. Loved the 360. I got it for Christmas from my ex-wife at the time. And I got to play games with my friend who doesn't live in the same city as me. You know, that was such a great... We take it for granted now, but at the time, that was so amazing. Like, I didn't have to go all the way to his house to play something. We got to play games online. And I have a list, because Rage gave me this. He's like, well, the only really exclusives for Xbox were... What were they?
Gears of War and Halo, and I mean, had Forza might have came out on 360.
Forza did come out on 360.
But if you're a racing fan, that was their answer to Gran Turismo. But I'm not hating on. Okay, out of all the Xboxes, I agree the 360 is the top. But I do have a huge issue with Xbox and their lack of exclusive must-have titles.
Well, at the time of
I
the
think
360,
Sony and Nintendo has always gave us exclusive games that, like, you have to have a PlayStation, or you have to have a Nintendo to play Mario. You have to have a PlayStation to play God of War, or whatever the game you're into. I feel Xbox has always lacked those must-have titles. That's my argument, and what Blaze is alluding to is the fact that he's saying that if I would have had the ability to play high-speed internet games at that time during that era, I might feel a little different about the 360, because without those exclusive fun games for me to play, there was no online gaming for me to get that same experience that some of you had.
well, for me, Halo, which I know you're not a big fan of Halo, but I used to play Halo with my friends, especially Halo 2. We used to play this game called Donkey Punch, and we had so much fun, where we made it where you only had pistols and you weren't allowed to use your pistols. You only punched each other, and oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much fun we used to have playing that game. And I used to have a lot of friends that would get on the Xbox together, and we would just have a blast doing Halo, Halo 1, Halo 2. The 360 also, well, the first two Halos were on the original Xbox, but we had Halo Reach was a lot of fun. But there was but Halo is one of the most exclusives when it comes to the Xbox. And of course, Gears of War. Gears of War is one of my favorite gaming series of all time, and I love the multiplayer on there. Hence another reason why I love the 360. But we also had games. So PlayStation had Final Fantasy, and don't get me wrong, I love Final Fantasy. SquareSoft made an American like almost Final Fantasy that was exclusive for the Xbox 360, and it's a great game. I played it. I want to go back and play it and beat it. And that's a game called Lost Odyssey, exclusive for the Xbox 360. Fantastic game where you play as a character who has been, I think he lost his memories, and hence the Lost Odyssey. And he's like a 1,000-year-old being, and it was a turn-based RPG, very similar to Final Fantasy, but it was a whole new story, whole new game for the Xbox 360. Also, another series that was exclusive to Xbox at the time was Fable, the Fable series. I don't know how much Fable you've played, but it's a great series, and there was multiplayer where you got to play, like me and my friend, we love playing co-op. We love playing games together and not just playing. We would do all that collecting stuff that you like to do on your Nintendo games, except we got to do it together. Had fun doing it together. Fable was one of those types of games. Now this isn't one of the bigger games, but me and my son love this game. It was a game that was exclusive to the Xbox 360 that was created and used the same art style as Akira Toriyama. For those not familiar who Akira Toriyama is, that is the creator of Dragon Balls and Dragon Ball Z. Blue Dragon was an exclusive Xbox 360 RPG game that used the art style from Akira Toriyama. He made the designs and everything, and it was a great RPG. Did you ever play Blue Dragon?
I own it. I've never beat it, but I own it.
Exclusive to the Xbox 360. Well, not anymore.
I didn't realize it was exclusive.
That was an Xbox.
At the time, I didn't know it was exclusive. I didn't know it was not on PlayStation or. No, I know it probably wasn't on a Nintendo system at the time, but no, I didn't realize that.
Another exclusive, Crackdown. Me and my friends had a blast playing Crackdown. Now, Crackdown 3 was pretty disappointing on it's a newer version. It did not capture the magic of the originals, but Crackdown was this fun. You played as, I believe, a cop, but you were this cop that you could slowly get superpowers. So you were this superpowered cop that there was, once you get leveled up more, you got to jump around the entire city, and it was a blast. And also multiplayer and fun. Saints Row started as an exclusive to Xbox 360. Saints Row was Xbox's response to Grand Theft Auto, which at the time was exclusive for the PlayStation. So Xbox made their own. Now, for me, the sequels, it got better as it went, because the first Saints Row was more like a Grand Theft Auto clone. The sequels got ridiculous. I don't know if you've played the Saints Row series, but they got more and more fun and ridiculous as they got. You started getting superpowers.
I've played one or two of them. Once again, never beat one, but I've owned a few of them and played them.
That also had multiplayer.
The 360, well, you mentioned Grand Theft Auto being exclusive. It must not have been exclusive the whole life of the 360, because something I have that I wanted to point out was one of the biggest selling games, and it might even be the biggest selling game. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look into this. We still play today, and it's
Grand Theft Auto 5.
Grand Theft Auto 5 came out during the 360 PS3 era.
Yeah, that was more like at the end, though.
Yeah, but it's still, I remember buying it for the 360 on launch, and then I remember less than a year later I had to buy it again, or maybe they did some kind of upgrade program, I can't remember, I got it for the Xbox One. But yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5, we're still playing that game today, and like, they have just refused to give us another GTA game because of how well that sells, and GTA Online is so massive that they are just refusing to release GTA 6. I think it's
Uh,
been 12 years now
so
since
great.
GTA 5 came out, and it's insane that that was a 360 game, and they've
Still,
upgraded it constantly to where it's still uh, they're still releasing content for that game all the time.
but well, Grand Theft Auto was exclusive, I believe, until uh 4, because Nico Bella with the fourth
Yeah,
one
because
was
I had
on
that on Xbox
360.
also. Yeah.
So but San Andreas and Vice City and all those were PlayStation.
Yeah, I'm aware. But yeah, for the 360 era though, it was multi-platform.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was multi-platform day one. I'd have to look that up. But I played those games on my 360, not my PlayStation 3. Um, but
So
yeah, so yeah,
my
that game is just crazy popular, and that's where it got its start was 360.
and
Go ahead.
the last one I have on here, this one isn't exactly a huge thing. It's two different games, but these were also 360 exclusives, and that is South Park Tenorman's Revenge and Let's Go Tower Defense, which I had a blast with both of those games.
Gotcha. All right,
But
so the number two, I think we'll kind of go together because I definitely want the number one spot.
okay,
So, the number two system is the Nintendo 64. Uh, the Nintendo 64, I think both of us was at the proper age to get the most miles out of this system. And what I mean by that is we were both still in school. So we had a lot of hangouts with our buddies, a lot of overnight Mountain Dew drinking game sessions. Um, I couldn't tell you how much Code Red I consumed in those years, just sitting around playing games like GoldenEye and Mario Kart 64. They were the just the greatest multi experiences I ever had in gaming, and this was before any kind of online gaming existed. And we would get together, and everybody would have their own colored N64 controllers,
oh yeah,
um, because everybody would get, you couldn't bring to the party the same atomic purple controller. You might get it mixed up with your buddies. So
man.
everybody had to, or the banana yellow controller, or
Oh, I
you
love the
know,
yellow one.
they had so many different colors of N64 controllers, and it's a shame that really Xbox is the only one keeping that tradition. Well, I guess PlayStation's been doing it, releasing colored controllers. Used to be a huge thing with the N64. But anyhow, great games like Mario 64, the first 3D Mario game was just phenomenal. They couldn't have made that game any better than they did. It was so good.
They
I
could have.
loved
They
it.
could have
They
added
really
Luigi.
couldn't have. They couldn't have. But Yoshi's in it towards the end. So
Yeah, give me some
you get a
Luigi
little bit
love.
of Yoshi. But they eventually did give you Luigi on the Nintendo DS with the Mario 64 they put on there. I think
I
it's
didn't
called
know
Mario
that.
64 DS, where you can play as Luigi, Mario. I want to say Wario, and man, I'm gonna get hammered not remembering which characters. I didn't know we were going to talk about that. But you bringing up Luigi, there is a version of the game where you can play as Luigi. Um,
Mm.
so there's an expanded version on the DS that they came out with, and it was a blast because you could go through, play the game again, and I think there was like maybe 10 exclusive stars to each character, so they added to the game. So it was like you could have more stars to collect. It was so fun. Love Mario. I could talk Mario 64 all day, so I better move on. But then I think I already mentioned Mario 64, Mario Kart 64. That's where Mario Party started. They're still making Mario Party games today.
One of my favorite
Um,
games of all time is Mario Party. I love Mario
the
Party.
original Super Smash Brothers was on Nintendo 64. These great party games, and one of my favorite uh, gems that they have yet to put on the Nintendo 64 online, and they made a mature version of Nintendo 64 online for the 64. So they have the ability. Once again, it's a rare game, so it's like So it's like you gave us GoldenEye. Where is Conker's Bad Fur Day on the NSO? I want to play Conker's Bad Fur Day again. That game was
I
just
have that on my
so.
Xbox 360 or
Yeah,
Xbox One. So
well, I still have my 64 copy. I also have Conker Reloaded on the Xbox 360, I think.
yeah,
Or
that
was
is
it regular Xbox? I'm trying to. No, that came out in
that
'05.
came.
Or
So Conker's Reloaded came out on the original Xbox.
Was it the
But
original Xbox or
it
360?
was the original Xbox.
Okay, well I have that too. Um, but man, Conker's Bad Fur Day is such a
Great
great
game.
great game. That was just out of nowhere and just shocking for Nintendo to release. I'm just still shocked that Nintendo was able to release that game, but it is such a good game. I just you fight a giant poo, so
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I'm gonna throw my at you. Forgot
um,
about that.
that game is so fun. Um, but the Nintendo 64 just was just the greatest multiplayer, just fun with your friends system that I remember ever playing. I never had more fun with multiplayer, and I know you do a lot of online gaming, and I do some, but not a lot. Um, but to me, there's no better feeling than having a room full of buddies and playing
It's
games like that. It's different than being at a different house playing that way. It's just a different experience. And I know we live in a different time, and I know I sound like an old grumpy old man now, but
I
it's
still
just
love coming
I
together and
love,
playing Mario Party at
yeah.
your house.
So having those games on the Switch online is really awesome to be
For
able to
me,
have some of those games.
and be able to play them online is great. But for me, the 64 was so high on my list because of that. I remember when we were kids, our mom was like, "You can't." It's like I don't want so many kids out here. If you want your friends to come over, you need to sleep outside. So we literally would put a tent outside in our backyard, and we would bring our Xbox in a long cord, our TV, our Xbox, or not Xbox. I'm sorry, our a
Yeah, we
64.
would have extension cords, and
We would have extension
we would have
cords
a
and bring our
TV
television.
in the system and everything outside, and we would play 64 out in a tent out in the backyard. I remember that.
Yeah,
It's
because
it's like
mom
hey,
didn't want us.
don't tell me we don't play outside enough. We're outside
We
playing
played
right now.
outside. Yeah,
We're
we went outside.
we're playing sports games.
I don't think our mom was a big fan of how we got around that argument, but we
we
definitely played
definitely
outside.
we definitely played outside.
We had a blast.
So so yeah, so 64 definitely deserves to be number 2. Um, but I am so happy to announce the number 1 system on our list is my favorite system of all time, and that is this bad boy up here, the Super Nintendo, which that is the Super Nintendo Classic, the mini version. I didn't break out the full size one to display behind me here, but the Super Nintendo is just where I think gaming changed. So the Nintendo brought us amazing IPs, introduced us to Mario and Metroid and Zelda and or well Link, and the Zelda games and introduced us to all these characters and Donkey Kong, which kind of Atari there, but the Super Nintendo is just that moment that they perfected everything. Every game was just a masterpiece. It's hard to rattle off how many good games was on the Super Nintendo. And it also came out in an era that Genesis just couldn't match the same quality. As much as I like the Sega Genesis as well, but it couldn't do some of the same stuff Super Nintendo did. And it was probably one of the last times that the Nintendo was more powerful than the competitors, to be honest.
For me, if you're
but-
gonna throw out the Sega, Sonic's one of my favorite franchises. I like Sonic more than I like Mario.
Right.
But then also Sega also perfected Home Alone the game. So I'm just gonna
Okay.
throw
So
that
yeah,
out there.
it was also an era we had different games. Like I remember, like I bought the Aladdin or the Disney collection on the Switch not too long ago, and I went and played through Aladdin, and they have both versions. They have the Sega version and the Super Nintendo version, and they're two separate. They're totally different games. Because in that era, there was not everything they could do on the Super Nintendo they could do on the Sega, so they were literally making two versions of these games. Like you mentioned, Home Alone was a game that was completely different on both systems.
The Super
So
Nintendo version sucked.
it was
They had
kind of wild though that if you were one of those kids that had both systems, would you have ever even thought to buy both games? Like it's kind of funny because they were two completely different
well,
games. Some of these games, Lion King was more close to the same on both. Um, but it's just funny how there's two different versions of games because the hardware was different on both systems.
there's
Um,
two different Beavis and Butthead games
yeah,
too,
there's two
and the
different Beavis and
Sega one I
Butthead
believe was
games,
better on that one too.
but it's just kind of crazy the differences in that era of gaming. But the Super Nintendo just had classic after classic. A Link to the Past, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past was on Super Nintendo. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the best games ever made. Super Mario World, one of the best
Probably
Mario
my
games
favorite
ever
Super
made.
Mario
It's
games.
so good. Earthbound. I mean,
Good game.
my goodness, Earthbound was an amazing game. Street Fighter 2, I remember being the definitive version because of the buttons. It literally, I think, forced Sega to create a new controller to sell because they only had the three buttons. And so Street Fighter 2 was better played on a Super Nintendo control pad because it had the six buttons instead of the three. So you were able to play Street Fighter 2 was the definitive version until Sega, I think, finally released a I don't remember what they called their six button controller, but
Wasn't it like Turbo?
yeah, their turbo or whatever it was. But Street Fighter 2 was a better, but although Mortal Kombat was better on Sega, and that was mainly because they would let them show blood, and Super Nintendo would not allow blood on the Super Nintendo. So if you wanted blood in your Mortal Kombat game, like it was in the arcade, you would have to play Sega. Donkey Kong Country started on Super Nintendo, which obviously, as you can see in the background here, Donkey Kong Country I still play to this day. You can play it on the Nintendo Switch online. They've got the new version that just came out, which is the Wii remaster remake.
One of my favorite
Mario
games.
RPG.
Exactly what I was about to bring up.
Mario, and I played the remastered version on the Switch, and it's still just an amazing, amazing game. It's amazing that that game ever came out.
It's so weird, but I love it.
Super Punch Out, which is just a really good version of what they already did with Punch Out. Killer Instinct. I mean,
yeah.
I used to try to juggle you and do 99 hit combos. And back then I was able to. We tried it a couple days ago, and I'm just not as I was getting up to maybe 12 hit combos.
I couldn't remember the moves.
I couldn't remember how to get those 99 hit combos, but I remember using Orchid, and I could just juggle you in the air and just keep going and going. I was so good at that game back in the day. Lufia 2.
Oh,
remember that game?
One of my favorite RPGs of all time. Rise of the Sentinels or Rise of the
I think that Sentinels or whatever
Love
it was.
Love it. Love that game.
Star Fox.
I didn't know you knew Lufia too.
Super Ghouls and Ghosts.
Yeah,
these games are just classics, and you could just go on and on and on about the Super Nintendo. Some of the best Disney games ever made. What was that Mickey Mouse game that you like kind of went through, and was it something Castle Illusion? It was such a good game.
Castle of Illusion.
Castle of Illusion, maybe. I think that was Sega. There was a Super Nintendo one though, but there Disney games for some reason. Disney games was at an all-time great in the Super Nintendo era. I think that in the Nintendo era, they really knew how to make good Nintendo Disney games. They were so good. But anyhow, I could go on and on about Super Nintendo. It was just it was just a great time in gaming. It's where a lot of us really kind of just fueled our love for gaming. I think, the Nintendo was cool, but Super Nintendo was, let's be honest, it was great.
Mhm.
Uh, it just took every game that you could do on the Nintendo and just made it better. And just looked a little bit better, but it was just a great time in gaming. And it was a time in gaming where I think a lot of people experimented and just made great properties. And a lot of the franchises you play today all came from, Xbox just announced a new Doom game, Doom the Dark Ages. Well,
Oh
guess where
yeah.
I played Doom for the first time? My Super Nintendo. And I know that was probably on a PC somewhere too. But
Oh yeah. It was definitely. It started as a PC game.
Doom with the red cartridge.
Yeah.
The first time I ever played Doom was on a Super Nintendo. It was such a good experience. I enjoyed that so much.
I didn't realize it was on the Super Nintendo actually.
Oh yeah, it was on the Super
Ooh.
Nintendo.
Maximum Carnage.
Oh yeah, there was a lot
That
of
was-
good Marvel games.
I forgot about that. That was a fun Super Nintendo game.
Yep. Turtles, Teenage Mutant Turtles 4, Turtles in Time.
Turtles in
Super
Time.
Nintendo.
Was Hyperstone Heist? That was also.
That was a
Super
Sega
Nintendo.
exclusive.
Oh, was it? That was.
We got Turtles 4 on Super Nintendo. Sega got Hyperstone Heist.
Okay,
So,
yeah, another one of those
two
where there was
separate, two separate games, but at least they gave those two different names.
Yeah,
They didn't
they
title
do
it the same.
completely
with two
different game
games.
too.
So, but that's what happened a lot of times is they gave it two separate. They were the same name and two separate. It was they happened all the time in that era. It was just it's kind of crazy to think. But yeah, the Super Nintendo is our number one ranked console of all time. The one that I'm is there any on that's missing from the list that you're disappointed didn't make the list?
Well, I would have liked 360 to be higher or the 64 to be higher, but I mean, I do love the Super Nintendo, so I don't hate the fact that it made number one. I think this is a definitive correct list. I mean, I love the original Nintendo. I love all the Xbox. My least favorite Xbox is the original one, and that's only because I didn't like the controls. I wasn't big on that big controller, even though I love the Dreamcast. So no, I'm pretty happy with the list. Like these are the 5 that I probably would have picked on my own, to be honest with you.
So if I'd have made the list by myself,
Well, we did make a list up by ourselves.
but I'm just saying if I'd have had control over what we presented, how about that? I really am a huge fan of the Switch. Definitely with the fact that you can play a lot of the old games on the Switch. Not only can you play the old games, but some of the new games have been so good.
Yeah.
I think the Switch in the future is going to go down as one of the greatest systems of all time. It's portable. It's a home console. The game collection is amazing. I've probably bought more games on my Switch than I've ever bought for any console during the time of the console. I'm a collector, so that's hard to say because like my Nintendo, Super Nintendo collection, that kind of stuff has built over time. So I mean, I've had games on them when they were out, but I guess what I'm trying to say is the Switch is still going on, and I think I have 62 games, which is a lot of games. I feel that's a lot of games for a system, and I play all of them. There's only a handful of those games that was bought, say, for my kids.
Right.
I think I own a couple Just Dance games, which I've watched them play. I never played. There's some Lego games that I bought for them for Christmas and stuff like that. But all the other games, there's only a handful of games that I just never really, probably will never touch. But the rest of the games I bought because I wanted to play. And I've beat almost all of them. I mean, I'm still working on some, like that Donkey Kong. I haven't beat Brothership yet, but I own it. I started it, but Donkey Kong came out, and I'm like, oh, I'll probably get through Donkey Kong quicker than Brothership, so I started Donkey Kong. I just finished Echoes of Wisdom recently, um, which is a fun Zelda game. Uh, but it's and that's kind of the crazy thing is we talk about the Super Nintendo. They just released last year Echoes of Wisdom, which is a top-down Zelda game in the style of a Link to the Past. I mean, it literally that's what it plays like, just with a more modern stuff you can do. But the gameplay style is top-down, just like a Link to the Past Super Nintendo. So that shows you how good that era of gaming was. That they're still making games that are
Well,
trying to give that look and
a lot
feel
of
of a
it's
Super
just
Nintendo game.
nostalgia.
You know,
People want
I
to
know
play games
it's
that reminds
nostalgia,
them.
but it just shows you how great those games were. The Echoes of Wisdom is a 2024 game that literally plays similar to a Super Nintendo game. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. But anyhow, I would definitely put the Switch up higher. Um, if I
Right.
if I could have. But unfortunately, I
We kind
wasn't
of
able to
already,
get it up high there.
I guess we kind of already talked about the other one that I would have probably wouldn't mind on there is the Sega. There's a lot of fun games that I enjoyed on Sega. But honestly, my top five is all of these games that we have in the top five, except for I had the Super Nintendo at six, and I had the Xbox One as five.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I've been an Xbox gamer since the 360, and I've been exclusive to Xbox almost. If I could afford to get it, like if I got a, I would get a used. I got a used PlayStation 3 once, well after its cycle. Um, I now have a Switch. Well, I mean, it's still technically going on, but they just announced the Switch 2 right when I got a Switch. In fairness, I did have the Switch at the beginning, but that something happened and I lost my Switch. Um, so uh Xbox for me when I could afford when I wanted one console, it was Xbox because that's where my friends played, and for me, online gaming has been a big part of my life. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had the Super Nintendo at six. It was almost in my top five. So honestly, I'm fine with this list. Um, 64, 360, PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, Super Nintendo. These are all some of my favorite console games of all time. I'm I'm happy with this list.
Cool, cool. All right. Well, next time we'll have to come up with a different rankings of something different. We'll try to do that from time to time, and we'll rank something else next time. But we
Yeah,
thought for the first episode, we thought uh,
consoles.
consoles was a pretty good place to start.